Reverend Dawn Heather Clark. Or Heather Dawn, I flipped it around.
I always love that name, Dawn. Thank you. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. It's my pleasure. I'm going to start a little different today with this topic today is active listening. And it is such a great topic. And I don't see her. Oh, I see her now. Okay, so we're starting out. Reverend Patty is going to speak to you because she has been doing some wonderful work with our parent organization, and she is going to talk to you a little bit about that and a little bit about how that affects us. Reverend Patty Mercado.
He's here. Good morning. So in Kenya, in South Africa, in Buenos Aires, in Argentina, in Shanghai, China, in the Ukraine, in Lima, Peru, in Geneva, Switzerland, in Sussex, Bournemouth, and Glasgow, England, in Cuba, and in 45 countries around the world, we all are practicing the science of mind. It's pretty incredible to know that what we're doing right here in San Clemente, California, is happening all over the world. And it's one of my great thrills that I get to be a part of one of something like 40 committees at our home office. I'm not on all of them, just a few. So Global Services is the group that reaches out into the world and supports our movement in whatever ways that we can. And so that is the committee that I'm reporting on this morning. It's Global Services, and it's exactly what it sounds like. It's how we're showing up in the world. And so some of the things that our committee of 10 does is we reach out to our friends in Peru, our friends in Africa, our friends in the Ukraine, and support them in various ways. And some of those things look like books being translated. And right now we have books that are translated, Science of Mind books, that are translated into Spanish, Russian, French, Dutch, Italian, Swedish, and this year we're adding Hindi. We also, through our committee, support little mini grants to some of our groups around the world. And so this past year in 2016, we supported work in the Ukraine, in Mexico, in Ireland, in Kenya, and in Puerto Rico. And right now we're accepting grants for 2017, or grant applications. So we'll be supporting even more groups in this coming year. There are conferences that are going on. You know, I go to the one in Switzerland, so you know about that one. Well, some of you do. Guess what? We have a conference in Switzerland. Also in Bournemouth, in England. In the Ukraine, there's a conference that's been happening for, I think, close to 20 years. Yeah, that's incredible. Isn't that amazing? And there's also conferences in Mexico and in Ireland. So there's a lot going on, and all of that is happening out here. One of the subcommittees that I'm on in Global Services is called the Heart of Peace. And this conversation started happening about a year and a half ago when someone on our committee was inspired by some work and said, it feels like this is an idea whose time has come to know peace in a greater way, to be that stand and offer that opportunity to our different centers, to the individuals in our centers, so that we can come together in a powerful way and teach peace, be peace, actively participate in peace. And so what that looks like is collective meditations. Because what we know is that when we meditate on our own, we embody that. When we meditate together in a group, and if you've done it, you've felt it, we create a field. So while we meditate for peace, it's beautiful and it feels really great and it's wonderful, and we embody it. And when we share it with someone else, where two or more are gathered, we create that field. And so that's what's been going on. We've been introducing this idea. Well, what a coinky-dink that a few weeks ago, we had a town hall meeting in this very room, and someone in our very congregation said, gosh, it feels like there's a lot of angst and agita and strife out in the world. Wouldn't it be great if we were a place where people could come and be at peace? Wouldn't it be great if we were a place that opened our doors and said, hey, come here, know the truth, experience the truth? And so we did. Dr. Heather saw the opportunity. She knew what I was working on. We brought ourselves together and we said, let us be a center for peace. And so here we are, offering peace meditations 3 times a week, just in case you weren't aware. Mondays at 12:15 with Dr. Heather. Tuesday evenings, to make it convenient for those of you that work, 6:15 to 6:45. Kathy and Tony lead that meditation. And Thursday mornings from 10 to 10:30, I'm right here in the sanctuary. For anyone who wants to come together and be a part of that marvelous activity of bringing peace to the world. So I know my 5 minutes is long up. I apologize. There's so much more to be said, but I hope that you have a little bit of a taste of the beautiful work that our organization is doing and how we're doing it right here in our center in San Clemente. Thank you very much. Oh, I did use
You
up
can
all of my
acknowledge
time.
it. Acknowledge. I didn't tell you had to stay, but you have
I
to
didn't
say.
read everything.
So in addition to this work, Reverend Patty is also active doing self-esteem work for at-risk kids. And so we are acknowledging her. She's the half of the team. Reverend Janet Moore is the other half of the team. And so the Women's Journey Conference, which happens every year, has around 350 kids. And Janet and Patty do a program for them. And it's all about raising their self-esteem. And you might be interested in knowing that 40% of those kids are from foster families. 40% of them, at least. So they have undertaken another step forward, and they're presenting free workshops at the Boys and Girls Clubs. They've done them. I had it here and it's disappeared. But anyway, you can tell us where we've done them already.
Last week we did our first one. It was in the Boys and Girls Club on Clinton Street in Garden Grove. And this next Wednesday, we're doing 2 more, also in Garden Grove, close to each other. And so we're on a roll, bringing the message of what we teach, our philosophy, to the Boys and Girls Club.
And it's such a good work. And Patty Terrell brought this that says right on me, that little box of flowers is for you. So in honor of Reverend Patty Mercado, let's acknowledge her again. And now you can step off the platform. Okay, I've got lots to say on this subject. First of all, I want to acknowledge Gino last week. Wow, she was fantastic. I didn't watch it in real time because you might have seen that I was actually in Costa Mesa at the Mesa Newport Center, and Deepak Chopra was there speaking, and I was really pleased to be a guest, and Dr. Jim was very honoring. He introduced me in front of all of the people, all of the attendees, and it was really, really great. Active listening, our practitioners are trained to be active listeners. And what that means is that you listen beyond your intellect. You listen with your heart. You listen with your whole being, active listening. And you ask questions for clarity. That's active listening. You are listening actually for what isn't said as well as what is said. And so active listening is a spiritual practice during this time. This time is the most important time that we could be talking about this, because we all could use to be listened to and to speak in safety, just like we're doing the peace meditations, because we want to be that place of peace. The same thing goes that we're at a place where it feels like out there is pretty divided. And it's not going to change until we bring our own whole being into conversation, to actively listen, especially to those others that don't think like us, especially to the ones that don't look like us. So, so much to say, so much to say. First and foremost, Ernest Holmes is in a book called Can We Talk to God, makes a point of saying talking or conversation is a two-way process. It isn't a one-way process. So when we are talking to God, if we're talking at God, there's no reciprocal conversation. But in a real conversation, not only is there input, but there's you know that you've been listened to because you can speak about what you've heard. So active listening is something all of us could be practicing, both with other people and especially with ourselves and with the presence of God within us. I know that Gino spoke last week about being in alignment. And when we're in alignment, that thin slicing or that intuition is right there. It's so easy for us to know what we know, to hear the voice for God that is always within us. It's one of my favorite Bible stories, so just going to tell it quickly. Hannah in the Old Testament wanted a son very badly, wanted a child. And so she prayed to God for a baby. And I don't know if she did the baby carriage or not. That's a different story for those of you who know the baby carriage story. If not, I'll tell you next week because it's a great story. But anyway, Hannah had a son. And so she said, Lord, I'll dedicate his life to God. So that meant that when he was of age, he went to study. He went to the temple and to study. And he was living with Eli, the priest, I guess, or whoever was in charge of that. And late one night, as everybody was sleeping, he heard Eli call him. And so he got out of bed and he went to Eli and he said, yes, master, I'm here. I hear you. And Eli said, go back to bed. I didn't call you. And a few minutes later, got back to bed. And a few minutes later, he gets here, Samuel. Where are you, Samuel? And Samuel again went to Eli and said, I'm here, master. What can I do for you? He said, go back to bed. I didn't call you. And so then the third time, it always happens in threes because it means complete. Again, he goes and says, I'm here for you, master. And the priest says, finally awakens to, since he hasn't been calling this boy, it must be some higher power that's calling him. He says, Samuel, go back to your bed and tell the Lord you're listening. So he did. And again he heard the voice, Samuel, Samuel, where are you? And Samuel said, speak, Lord, for your servant hears. Now, 24/7, God is speaking to us. 24/7, God is calling my name, calling your name. Are we listening? Are we listening? It's always going to be something in our highest and best good. And it might not always seem to be easy for us to obey that voice for God. It might sometimes feel like, oh, that's uncomfortable. Is there anyone else up there? I don't want to do it. That's scary. But always it's for our highest and best good when we listen to that inner voice. In Oprah's magazine, I just started getting it again, and there are two things I want to talk about from the magazine. First of all, she saw that there was all this angst and divisiveness in society. So she gathered a group of women together just to talk and have lunch. And she purposely chose people from both sides of the aisle. And was surprised that more people voted for the Republican side of the aisle than the Democrat side, but they just talked. They just talked. No one's mind was changed, but everyone was heard. And she said she was sure by the end of the conversation that good had happened because they heard one another. They started some understanding with one another. That could be ours to do as well. We're not doing it this morning, but it could be ours to do, to be that place where not only are we willing to be that place of sacred silence, that sacred place where peace is, but also to be that place where it's safe to have a different opinion. It's safe to have a different point of view, and your point of view will be honored and respected. That's what we're taught. That's what the science of mind says. It doesn't say we teach people what to think. It's how to think. How to think. So the other thing that I read that I thought is right exactly this topic, Elizabeth Gilbert, you know, the Eat, Pray, Love writer, has a column in Oprah's magazine, and she wrote about listening to that voice, and she actually did it this way, and we can do this. She said it never occurred to her to ask. She had for 13 years she'd had problems with her knee. From the time she had her breakdown, any of you who know her story, she had a breakdown, and then she left that marriage, and then she started on her spiritual path, and she went to India and went all Italy, India, and Bali, and Anyway, she had this wonderful experience. The knee hurt. For 13 years, she practiced everything she could try. She practiced meditation. She practiced yoga. She did stretching. She went to physical therapists, and she was so gentle with that knee. And finally, one night, she talked to her knee. And this is a pretty obvious thing. Talk to yourself, to the part of your body that you've been ignoring. She said, "What is it I can do for you?" And then she said she heard in a voice, not her own, because sometimes divine mind has to speak to us in that way, so we pay attention. And it said to her, "Run, I want to run. I want to move. I want to jump. I want to climb. I want to do what knees are made to do. Quit babying me." She went for a run. The next day she ran 3 miles, and her knee didn't give her any problem whatsoever. She started listening, active listening to herself, to the wisdom within her. Now, it might sound like it comes from the knee. It doesn't come from the knee. It comes from that all-knowing part of us that we call spirit or God, source energy. Any one of us could be solving all of our issues this very same way. So the minister that put together the notes for today, her name is Michelle Ingalls. She's in San Diego County. She was part of the Lifelong Learning Summit. She's a former teacher, and she's just fantastic. I want to at least include one thing she said besides Ernest's quote. And that is, she quotes a story that comes from the Yukon. And it was of 2 skiers, and they were skiing across the ice of a frozen lake. And they had flashlights. It was, I guess, getting night. And they came across a moose. How many of you have seen a moose? Okay, so you know how big they are? They're huge. They're the hugest animals, and their antlers are they're not like deer antlers. They're like these big, big things. There are a whole bunch of them in Banff and Lake Louise, so I'm very familiar with them. Anyway, they came across a moose that was it was trying to get out of, it had broken through the ice and was in the water. And it was trying to get out, and the more it was trying to get out, the more it was breaking away ice. And anyway, it was tiring, and it was getting darker and colder. Well, since they were prepared, they had their tent with them that they would have, so they put their tent up around the moose and themselves inside. You know, so it's like an ice tent, so it was covering them. And they kept that moose company. I'm certain it had something to say about it. For the entire night, they kept their flashlights. They'd keep, because they also wanted to make sure that the ice shards didn't start forming, because then it would have been dangerous for the moose to get out. And then when morning came, they went out and got help and brought a rope and pulled the moose out. Of course, let him go as soon as he was out of danger of getting back in the water. Well, why is this an important story? Sometimes we're the moose. We fall in it. We fall right in it, and we can't see a way out of it. And that's when we need someone who's willing to be there with us while we're making wild noises, while it's uncomfortable. We need someone just to be there, providing us with warmth and light until we can provide it for ourselves again. So active listening. How can we, each one of us, be more of what we came here to be this week? If you have family or friends who are not in the same exact place in consciousness that you are, maybe that's a place to start. To be willing to start a conversation. And maybe the conversation is, I miss you. I miss you. Is there some way we can be together in love and kindness without making each other wrong or scaring each other out of the tent? Where we can just hold up a little flashlight and see the light, the truth that's in ourselves and each other. You know, it's time for our organization has an annual conference. And last year we had a wonderful conference in Salt Lake City. And those of us who went said, gosh, wouldn't it be great if more of our community to come to this, because it is so great. And if people only knew that there was a bigger organization that was doing good work in the world, like Reverend Patty just talked about. Well, it's happening right now, only this year it's virtual. So I voted yesterday after the business meeting. But here's the thing, I'm going to invite every single one of you, if you can be here at 5 o'clock tomorrow night, I'm going to play, or anything from 5 until about 9, 8 or 9, I'm going to play the closing ceremony. I'm going to play the whole thing, the whole last night of the convention, which is virtual. So we'll have it. There's fantastic music. There's a memorial service for those who've passed on, and that does include Reverend Jeff and Dr. Jackie and many others. There's an honoring ceremony that also honors ministers and those getting doctoral degrees. It's going to be just wonderful. So you're all invited here, but if you don't want to come here, if you're a delegate and know how, you can go to the Zoom meeting and just Zoom in there and watch. Have people over. This is a really good, positive thing that we're doing. And we can actively listen to that voice for God that is in the larger organization. The reason that we are not in Tennessee, which is where we were supposed to be, is because of the legislation that was passed in Tennessee that was discriminatory. And Centers for Spiritual Living said we cannot be for discrimination. We cannot stand for discriminating against one kind of person over another We can't discriminate. And we say that right in our organizational design model. Regardless of color, creed, sexual orientation, or whatever, everyone is welcome. Everyone. All God's kids have a right in this choir. Every single one. So, just take a deep breath. Put your hand on your heart for a moment. Feel that heart beating. Imagine how the moose's heart must have been just pounding out of its chest in fear, and yet it was being helped. And just know right where you are, God's intelligence and wisdom and love is. And it's enough. God's love is enough. And so it is. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay, and Diane's going to set us up and I'm going to pray.
In this moment, in this place, I remember who I am, letting fear and worry fall away from me. I open my eyes and see there is only love. There is only love. Love that heals, love that sets us free. There is only love.
There is only love. For there is only God, and God is love. So in this holy moment of right now, I recognize and know that all the love that is needed in order to transform each and every life of each and every person on this planet is already here. It's already known. It's not going to happen in the future. It's right now known. What I know is that this love is the only healing power of the universe, and it's doing its good work right now. I am speaking my word to make it welcome everywhere, to make it welcome in those that have been diagnosed with a disease or an illness or a condition, to know that the presence of God is greater than any diagnosis or any prognosis, but is in fact full freedom, full life, full power and joy right now. And furthermore, I know that I actively listen to that voice for God within. I take time every single day in the silence. I don't spend my time only in prayer, but prayer and meditation, so that I'm equally communicating with that divine mind, with that divine presence, with that one that is calling my name. I'm saying, yes, Master, your daughter or son listens. I listen. And furthermore, I know that I am one with the prospering power that is God. And I know and declare that this awareness is an awareness of prosperity that is growing and grand and exceptional, more prosperity than ever before. And furthermore, I know that this divine presence is the presence of love for each other. And so I know that each and every relationship is healthy and has healthy boundaries and healthy expression. I know that each and every relationship, whether it's a friendship or whether it's a marriage, an intimate relationship, each one is strengthened by this word. Through this word, each one is inspired to see beyond any stuck places, any sense of division in family, friends, or this country, and to know only unity, only oneness, only the peace and power of God. I know that this is already the truth. And I'm so very grateful for all that God is, for all that God is right here, right now. Knowing that the word that I have spoken is a word of power and a word of peace, because it's a word of truth. I simply, with confidence, put this word into God's hands, into the law of God. It is complete. And please join me in saying, and so it is. Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend Heather. And please